Today we are going to see one interesting topic of Angular, which is lies in the beginner level actually, because if you are someone who is learning Angular, you need to know about how you can pass a data between the components, and it's very essential actually. If you want to learn Angular in a practical way, you have to develop the capability that you will be thinking using the Angular concepts and the knowledge of Angular to develop an real-time application. So for those things, you need to know this various ways that are available for intercomponent communication. So today we are going to talk about this 5 ways of sharing a data between the components. I am referring all the ways which are available in the latest version by this date of January 2023, where we have an Angular stable release version of Angular 15. So let's talk about it. So the first is parent to child, and the second is very similar, child to parent component. So this has been a very prominent since the Angular version 7 or 8. You can see this is available since long time now. So this is one way which was very popular, where you have the relation between your component which is of parent to child. I have an example to show here. So this is a very simple application I just created, where I have a nav bar which is in the blue, and I put a menu there using the orange color, and it says the menu works. So this is my parent to child relation. I can see that in my app component HTML at a top root level, I just have an app nav bar, and I have two components created, nav bar and menu. I created them using my Angular CLI command is nggenerate c for component, and the name of the component whatever I want. This whatever you can put. I put a nav bar, menu you can put whatever you want. So in the nav bar I have, if I see the HTML, I have an app menu which is a selector for my menu. So selector we use wherever we want, like any component code I want to put inside another component, then I will use a selector. And this is the beauty of Angular application. Angular is it provides us a capability where we can develop the multiple components. We can basically divide each element on the UI, divide each block of whatever we see on the website into a smallest units which are decomposable, and at the end those smallest units together forms an entire application. So here I have a app menu inside a nav bar, and inside that menu I have one menu, so I can put something like menu 1, menu 2, like this, and I should see it is reflected here. So this is a parent to child relationship. For now I will just tell you the way, and then we will go in detail of each. Sharing the data using view child property, then sharing the data between not related component, and that usually happens through the way of services. So we will go one by one, and I will show you the example of each in my VS Code and in the browser, so that not just a theoretical concept, you will also understand practically how I'm implementing the things. So let's jump to the VS Code. So as I have shown in my previous videos that we can create any Angular artifacts using the Angular CLI, but I want to today recommend you one extension which is pretty time saving if you are working on Angular. The name is Angular Files. So what it does, it provides you an ability where you can generate the Angular artifacts like Angular components, services, directives, whatever you want to create, that you can create without have to bother about the CLI. What you have to do is just right click on your project structure, and from there you can create new artifacts in your Angular project. So I will install it quickly. I have it installed now, and I will go to my project, and now if I right click here on my app, I see an option: generate component, generate directive, generate module, pipe, class, enum, interface. These are all the supported options. So I will create a component, and it will ask me a name. So I want to put a name, parent. Then you can see that it has been added here. We'll create one more, namely child, and you can see the files are automatically generated. So as you can see, I have quickly created two components, parent component and child component, using the Angular Files extension that I just told you about, which helps you to create the Angular components or Angular services, whatever you want, through the VS Code itself. Okay, so now you can see that I have one component there. I have a property parent message, and that I am passing to a child message attribute here in my template. So what I'm doing here in my parent, I have embedded the child component, and for that I am using this tag app hyphen child. Now this is the tag which is coming from the selector of my child. You can see that every component in the Angular have a selector. So for this parent, it also have an selector, namely app hyphen parent, and that is referred in the app component HTML. Here you can see app hyphen parent is the parent tag that I am referring in the app component HTML. Reason being, your app component is a top level component and all your components inside it will start from it. So it's like an root of a tree. You can imagine your virtual tree, and it starts from the app component, whatever you put here, and then all the tags or the components which are inside it will be basically present somewhere nested inside it. You can have the multiple also here. If I put the app parent twice, then it will show the app parent and whatever inside it, inside the parent component twice here. If I add it here, it will show twice it on my browser. So coming to the topic of parent to child, I have a parent message variable I set, and the value is message from parent that I want to pass to my child. And simple syntax I have here. Through an attribute binding, I have binded the child message to an parent message, and now this child message I will use somewhere in my child component to show a data that I received from parent component. So in my child component, I have a very simple template where through a string interpolation, this is the string interpolation syntax where you show the variables using the two curly brackets like this. You have opening curly brackets and the closing curly brackets, and inside that is your variable enclosed. So child message I have to receive from my parent, and that one I am showing here. So if you notice, we have a special annotation here which is @input. So what this @input is telling us, if you see this @input is coming from the Angular core, and read the documentation, it says that it's a interface input, and it has been like defined here in the input decorator. So this is the decorator actually, and the purpose of input decorator is to receive the value from parent component inside a child. So now let's see on the browser how it works. So I can see that it's very simple now, as it's showing only one line, but this say is a part of my child, and this message from parent is also part of my child, but the data I have here, message from parent, is coming from my parent component. So if I go here and change the message that this is second message, I can see that it has been reflected here as well. So this is a very simple use case of parent to child data passing. Child to parent component data passing, this can happen in a two-way. We can use the view child decorator, and then we can use also an output decorator along with the event emitter. So let's see both of them in action in our VS Code. So as you can see here in my parent component, I have a view child decorator used for a variable namely child component, and it's a child is a variable name, and child component is of it is a type of my child variable. So what I am telling here to my template is, in my template I have app child component referred, and what I want to do is I want to have a variable named the child, which will be basically pointing to a child component type of tag here, and then I can use this child variable to set the values of this app child children component from my parent component. So this is the fundamental approach. So you can see here in my lifecycle hook, namely ng, after viewing it, I'm setting the this.child.message value to the message here. So what's happening here, if you see, I have a message variable defined in the children component, and that I have set a value to something string here, and now I want to use the same value here in my parent. So in the Angular framework, the parent component have that flexibility that it can access the variables of its child component directly. So you don't need to do any special modification into your child component. If you see here, I don't have any specific or any additional things written here. Just for the data passing, it's a plain component, and all logic is for its view purpose. So I don't have any additional things for data passing here in the child component. So what I did using the view child decorator, actually there are two decorators. View children is a one and the view child is a one. There is a difference between view children and the view child that I will talk in the later part of the series. So I just set the value of the child message to the parent message, which I'm using here, and I can show you that in the application this message is part of a parent component, and it has listened to the value from a child component, and it's showing that hello, I'm a data from child. So this was a very simple example how you can pass a data from child to a parent using view child decorator. Second way of child to parent component, and it is using @output decorator and event emitter. So let's see how it works. So here in the approach using @output, we have to do a modification in our child component. So you can see I have an @output decorator use, and then one variable I have created here, namely message event, and that is actually instance of new event emitter, and it's coming from an Angular core. So if you see, event emitter is the interface that has these properties here, prototype, new, which it decides whether it is asynchronous or not using some conditions. So if you read it, it says use in a components with output directory to emit custom events synchronously or asynchronously and register handlers for those events by subscribing to an instance. So in a simple language, it extends the RxJs subset. So if you don't know what is RxJs, RxJs is a reactive extension for the JavaScript. It is a library which provides us a capability of handling the asynchronous stuff in the JavaScript and in the TypeScript. So it is asynchronous behavior, actually what we want to accomplish here with output. Whenever any event will happen in the child, we want to trigger that event and want to tell compiler or want to tell an backend process to emit that data, to pick that data from the child and to pass that data to a parent, so that parent will know that the data has updated and it can perform a task that it's sent to update or render the value again. So what's happening here, as you can see, I have a message that I have set here, something here as a text value, and I have a message event, and that message event I am calling inside a method namely send message, and that send message is being triggered on the event of the click button. So when I will click on this button which has a text send message, then it will call a send message, and inside that send message, using my output decorator variable message event, it will emit the value of what, my message, to a parent. So now the next duty here is with the parent, that it has to listen that emitted value and want to process it or want to do whatever it has to do. So here you can see I have a custom method namely receive message, which listens to the message event, and that message event then now binded with the property of parent itself, which is here the message. The thing to notice here, in your app child selector which you have referred in the template, this event message event name has to be exact same as what you have mentioned here in your child component. That's a mandatory thing. So if I go to my browser, I can see that I have a send message which is part of my child component, and the message is of the parent. I have not put much styling or the design on the CSS here, so that's why it's very plain. If I click on a send message, you can see that the text value has received here, and it has been now shown, it has been rendered in the parent component. So this is the way how we pass a data from a child to a parent using @output and event emitter. So the third type of sharing a data is sharing a data between siblings component. Now here you don't have that compulsion of a relationship where you want to have a parent to child kind of a relation between component. It is irrespective here that if you have just two components which are sitting at the same hierarchy, you can send data between them. So let's jump to the VS Code and see how it will work. Now I have two components created, box 1 and the box 2. And what I want to do here is I want a box1 and box2, both of these two components, to listen to a common data and to show it in their UI. So if I take you to the browser, you can see that I have two boxes here, and the blue box1 and the box2, and I have a box1's data and the box2's data. Now I want to show a common data in both of these two components, and in order to achieve that, I will use a concept of services. So I created a service, namely a box service, and I have put one variable, namely data, and this is the text string I assigned to that data variable. And since I want to show that data variable in my component, I am showing that here. So I have a local variable data created here for the box2 specific. Its scope is restricted to box2 only, and now from this box service I'm getting that value of data and assigning to the local variable, and ultimately I'm showing that here. So using the string interpolation, you can see I have rendered the data variable here in the box2. So this is very simple example here. Actually what I have done here, which is new, that I introduced and service, and through a service we can enable the components to listen to a common source of data, and through which they can show that data on their respective UIs. So it's not just a one way. What I mean by one way is that, like here in this current example, I'm listening a data from my service to a component box to I'm showing here. But what if I have to send a data to my service and update it and then again show it here? So that's what I'm referring a two-way here. It's just not a read from the service, but also write to the service I'm referring. So if I have to do that, like from my component, I have to change the state of my variable inside of service, and then again want to reflect back in the component, then we have to think about a way through which we can do. And there are some other tools available that we can leverage for the same purpose, and that falls under our last approach of sharing a data between component, which is through services. And there we have different options like RxJs and ngrx and other state management plugins. Now we'll go to the fourth approach, which is sharing a data between not related components, and that we are doing through a way of services. So I already show you how we can pass a data from services to a component, and the component can listen to it and then render it on their UI. Now that was a one-way communication, by the way, where your services were just telling what data to show and the components were listening to it and showing it here on their UI. But now we want to go a little one step ahead, and want to modify data in the services, and also want to let other components know that I have modified the data of this particular object. Now it's your responsibility to update that on your UI. So we will implement that through and services. And as I already said that we cannot directly do that through a way of service itself. We need support for the asynchronous programming here, and for the same reason we are using in RxJs. So we are using a behavior subset from the RxJs. As you can see, it is a variant of a subset that requires an initial value and emits its current value whenever it is subscribed to. So behavior subset basically is a type of subset, plain subset in the RxJs, but the difference here with the behavior subset is that your behavior subset in all cases it must be initialized with some initial value. So if I don't put this null here, it will complain me that behavior subset need to have an underscore value, some value initially assigned to. So that is a basic difference between subset and the behavior subset. So coming back to our use case, I want to pass a data from box 1 to a box 2, and that will happen through a service. So what I did here in my box service, I have created a change data service. There I am modifying the data of service variable, and that I'm doing through a next method. So if you are not aware, next is a method in the subset, behavior subset, which we use to change the state of a variable which is of subset or the behavior subset type. So if you have to change the state of those variables, you cannot directly do like this, like the data equals to some new value. If you do this way, it's not going to work, because this is not a simple or plain type of variable. This is the reactive extension of the JavaScript. It supports an asynchronous nature, so you have to do that through and next. And So same goes with your listening to a data. If you want to update a data, you have to go with the next, and if you have to listen to this data, then you have to subscribe to it. So what I did here in my components of box 1 and the box 2, I have subscribed to the current data, and that I'm doing through this syntax box service. I created an instance of box service here in my constructor parameter, and I'm invoking the current data. You can see that current data is basically is assignable as assigned to a current data through an as observable. So the behavior subset I am assigning to an current data using an as observable, and the same I'm using here to subscribe. So after subscribing, what I want to do is whenever I'll get a data from that subscription, I will assign this to a local data variable. That's what I'm doing inside the body of this arrow function. This was only one liner statement I needed inside this arrow function. That's why I use this and this simple shorthand notation. But if you have some multiple lines of code, then you need to put an curly brackets, and inside that you have to define your method body. So this is my simple logic. Whenever I will click on the send data, I'm calling and send on the click event, I'm calling this my custom method send data, and then I want to change the state of that current data variable in the service itself. So I'm using a box service instance from my constructor parameter, and then I'm calling a change data of it. So ultimately what it will do is it will change the state of it using the next method of RxJs. So let's see this in action. As you can see, I have two boxes and I have kept two buttons here, send to box 2 and send to box 1. So box 1 will send a data to a box 2, and similarly box 2 has to send a data to a box 1. So when I will click on it, it is updating the value that data from box 1, and because I click from the box 1, you can see that it is showing that this is data from the box 1. So again, if I do it this time on the box 2, it will show the data from box 2 on the both boxes here. So what's happening is whenever any box is updating a data, it's telling a service that this data has been updated, and since we have kept a subscription in the constructor body of this component, as you can see here on the line number 12, it continuously keeps on listening to what changes has happened to that variable in the box service, and automatically it updates that in its HTML. So that part is basically taken care by Angular change detection mechanism. So the thing with Angular is that whenever you change any variable in your Angular template, Angular change detection mechanism automatically runs, it works behind the scenes and it runs it. And so whatever we see on the UI is a result of updated document object map that we have. So in our DOM tree, what things to update, what things to remove, that is taken care by Angular's change detection mechanism.